Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings.
Today's podcast is sponsored by SSL Systems, providers of intelligent site search and navigation solutions. Learn more at sli-systems.com and listen to their interviews at ecommercepodcast.com. Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations, a weekly podcast focusing on e-commerce topics featuring interviews with prominent people in the e-commerce space.
Well, welcome to another edition of E-Commerce Conversations. My name is Kerry Murdoch. Millie Abdu Hayaglu is with us today. Millie is the founder and CEO of Comodo, a firm that provides security services to e-commerce firms and to online consumers worldwide. Millie is a recent recipient of an Entrepreneur Award by Ernst & Young, and he's a leading voice in security matters worldwide. And Millie, we want to thank you for your time today.
Thanks for having me, guys. Thank you.
Sure. Millie, we're here today to talk about security, online security, security to protect consumers, and what sort of security products e-commerce merchants should offer their shoppers. Our audience, of course, is e-commerce merchants. I was wondering, in terms of SSL certificates, I know you're an issuer and a provider of SSL certificates. Your firm is, Millie.
Indeed.
There's a new SSL certificate out called the EV SSL certificate.
Yes.
Could you explain that to us briefly, what that is? And
Sure.
we'll ask you a question about that.
Sure. The problem, I don't know whether your listeners know that or not, but I've initiated that EVSSL certificates forum called CAP Forum. The problem was, so why did we come up with this new type of certificate? The problem that we had previously was anyone with $10, $15 in their pocket could go get this yellow padlock. Mm-hmm. So anyone and everyone, whether they are legitimate e-commerce company or the fraudsters, could get for $15 a digital certificate. So the users who came to rely on seeing that padlock lost the trust in that padlock because it meant nothing. All it means is you got $15 in your pocket to buy that. So there was no standard for issuing a NSSL certificate. So there was no industry standard. So that's when I made the call to industry in around April, May 2005, and I said to them, come on guys, if we're not going to do this, who will? Let's sit down around a table and build standards so that consumers will feel secure when they see a sign of trust. Because what was the sign of trust? That yellow padlock had been eroded by, companies who were issuing certificates without any validation because there was no standard to comply to. That's how EV SSL certificates came about. EV certificates are the first certificate in the world that has a standard for validation. So not everyone can get it, just like a passport. You need to have certain criteria for you to get a passport. It's not just money anymore. So with this EVSSL certificate, you go through stringent validation before you can get one. So users are protected.
EV meaning extra validation.
Extended validation.
I'm sorry, extended validation.
But we're not very imaginative at CAP Forum, I'm afraid.
Tell me the steps involved then. If there's uniform standards for the EV, what are the steps involved for obtaining one?
There is quite few steps because we want to make sure. At stage one, we'd rather be secure than easier. So we have put a lot of steps to make sure that not everyone can obtain it. As we go ahead and improve those processes, we'll make it easier. However, the initiative is about making sure that there is security for consumers. So if you want to obtain a digital certificate, you have to go through some stringent process, quite a few steps. Okay. I don't know exact number, but a lot of steps that you have to go through. But then again, end users deserve that.
So the merchant has to, for example, the merchant would have to prove to, say, Comodo, if the merchant were to get an EV SSL, things such as the physical address, that they have a physical address,
domain ownership, and then if need be, we might need to get their lawyers to write them a letter. So there are, and we then go check credible third-party databases, whether they exist or not. So it's a multi-pronged approach whereby we try to validate that entity from many different angles.
Okay. Millie, say the EV SSL, that does help consumers for the reasons that you just explained. What prevents a thief from faking an EV SSL certificate? That is, creating a fake seal, creating fake certification requirements or certification standards, and just putting that up on a site?
Sure. There are two different problems. Problem number one, can a thief, a fraudster, try to break our processes and obtain one? In theory, of course it is. 100% security does not exist. What I used to tell people, hey, I know where 100% security exists. It's a black hole. You can throw your password and key in a black hole, you'll never get it back, right? But even that is not the case anymore because black holes are now known to be radiating things depending on what goes inside. So 100% security, unfortunately, does not exist. I cannot put my hand on heart and say to you, yeah, don't worry, we're 100%, no thief can get this. However, one thing I can say is, it's a bloody good process that we put in place that really minimizes the risk. Now, coming to whether, let's say you have a website and whether you can, we have a website and whether you can, let's say, you're a fraudster and you want to fake that EV sign. Mm-hmm. That is very difficult to do because it's built into the browser address bar itself.
I see.
So it is not a content that you see on the site, which could be faked. It is built into the browser itself. So your browser address bar will turn green. And it is not easy to do that just simply by having a website. So those are the two potential attacks. For me to be able to do that, I have to introduce a malware that will overwrite your browser. And that becomes a very, very, difficult task. Even the malware is still out there, it's still a difficult task.
Are you aware of anyone that's tried to replicate a EV SSL in a dishonest way?
To my knowledge, not yet. I'm not saying there won't be. I'm sure there will be people, as more users trust on EV, it will be attacked.
It seems to me, Millie, that for EV SSL to work properly, consumers have to understand it and have to know to look for it.
100%.
What percentage of online shoppers know to look for an EV SSL right now?
Not enough. However, we don't expect, when we introduced this standard, we did not expect an overnight success. We are not here for an overnight, success. We're here for the long term. And any new technology, any new concept does require time of adoption. I mean, look at us. Even now, there are still people out there who don't know that they need a firewall and antivirus. And it's 25-year-old technology, right? So it will take time. It's only been a year since IE introduced it. Firefox only introduced it a month or two ago. So it's a very, very, very new technology, and we don't expect overnight, even though we are seeing a lot of e-commerce sites getting these certificates, making sure that to give that trust to their customers. But we don't expect overnight success. However, all the indications that we have are going uptrend and going as per our predictions. So we're getting very good response from the marketplace, and we're seeing the stats ourselves. People pay. People are paying for it and getting these certificates.
So what percentage of consumers right now would you guess?
Well, actually, quite a good percentage of consumers, if you look at Internet Explorer 7 has the technology built in already.
Mm-hmm.
And Microsoft made it a compulsory upgrade from IE6 to IE7.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say majority of IE users now have this technology built in. Whether they realize it's there or not is a different issue. That I don't know. But the technology is now within their browsers. Now Firefox have released their latest version. A lot of Firefox users will be migrating towards that as well. So I think a good chunk of majority of users already have the technology in their machines, in their browsers now, I would say. Of course, like you said, education of it and the users understanding it's there and being able to use it or being able to understand what it means is going to be a continuous training.
You mentioned price there, Millie. How much more does for a merchant to buy an EV SSL certificate from Comodo, your firm? How much more will that cost him?
It costs around $400 to buy an EV SSL certificate,
okay.
And that is about $300 more than our ordinary certificates, the SSLs, the padlock, yellow padlock ones.
Mm-hmm. Is it worth it? Would you recommend it to e-commerce merchants now that they do it?
Totally, for simple reason, just simply converting one customer because of an EV will pay for itself in no time.
That's a good point.
So, you only have to look at how many customers do I have to convince by me having an EV, will it pay for itself? I mean, $400, what are you selling? On average, $50? If, over 1 year period, if you can convert, how many people? 10 people, you're in profit already. And I think there is more than 10 people out there who will put value onto EV.
That makes sense. Let's broaden the discussion just for a sec, Millie, and talk about the issuance of seals generally, seals on a website. We here at Practical E-commerce, we've seen a lot of them. We've seen some go away already, but it seems to us there's so many seals. There's seals that are essentially meaningless that require no steps for a merchant to obtain. There are seals that a merchant can display if they belong to certain organizations, etc. Yeah. Are there any standards for issuing or for the displaying of seals on an e-commerce site?
None whatsoever. Unfortunately, there is this thing that we call sealomania. Everyone saying, "Here's a seal." Here's that seal, this seal. I'm a Tunnel Diggers Association seal. Put it on your website. So the problem here is the biggest problem we're facing on internet today is unless you can verify, it's worth nothing. What is the point of you having a Visa logo if I cannot verify that Visa have authorized you to display it? What point is it for you to say to me, hey, look, I am trusted. How can I validate that? I can't. The content that we see, the seals, the logos that we see, cannot be validated. Hence, they have no value. This is why you see many of these come and go, because people realize that I could simply copy and paste a seal on my website. So what does that mean? I don't even have to pay for it. What is there to stop me from getting a Visa logo on my site by simply copying and pasting it? Nothing. So that is a problem, and that is a problem that we have addressed at Comodo by giving people tools so that they can validate what they see.
Do you anticipate any sort of regulation with seals at any point in time?
I hope there will be. I will be pushing for it in future, most definitely. We've been busy with some other standards within the forum that we've set up, the CAP forum, to get to the next level of certificate validations. In future, I hope there will be. I will be pushing for it personally, and I will be pushing for authentication of seals as well. I want to enable consumers and users for them to be able to authenticate what they see. That is an important thing, because there is no point in giving something that can easily be copied. We need to empower consumers so that they can see that we are legitimate as e-merchants.
That makes sense. We have just a couple of minutes left. Millie,
Sure.
I wanted to ask you briefly, for e-commerce merchants to help them decide which SSL certificate issuer to purchase their certificates from. If the technology is the same behind EV SSL, you mentioned uniform standards for those, and regular SSLs, how is a merchant to know where to buy their SSL certificates from?
That's a very good question indeed. What plays EV SSL certificate? What plays a role in that is everyone is same standard. Price is one differentiator that I can throw out. Customer support is another one. I would be biased to say, hey, buy from Comodo, but what you should be looking for is the price. It's the same thing. So why pay double, triple, quadruple? You go for a cost-effective version. Of course, you also have to care about customer care, customer support. You do need support every so often. So you want to go with a company who will be there for you. So those are the two main things. Of course, there are other innovations that takes place. For example, EV, even though it's released, you still need to do one or two little things to enable it on all your sites. So some companies have enabled e-merchants with easier tools for them to deploy EVs, and that's it really. Apart from that, main thing is the price, I would say, at this stage.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, Millie, our listeners, of course, as I said earlier, our listeners are e-commerce merchants. Anything else on your mind? Anything you'd like to say to them or offer to them as it relates to SSL certificates?
All I can say is make sure that you give the ability for your consumers to differentiate you by knowing that you're trusted. Give them tools so that they can validate you. The more you empower your users, the more they will trust you.
Okay. Well, your site is Comodo. That's Comodo.com, Comodo.com. You mentioned CAP Forum. What is the URL for that once more, Millie?
It's CAB Forum, FORUM.org,
okay.
which stands for Certification Authorities and Browsers Forum.org.
Okay. Well, Millie Abdul Hayaglu, the founder and CEO of Comodo, we thank you for your time today, sir.
Thank you, Kerry. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That's all the time we have for this week's e-commerce conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. Please tune in next week for another new episode.